Hello and welcome to the Swan Song Project Podcast. My name is Ben Buddy Slack and I'm the founder of the Swan Song Project. We're a charity that helps people facing the end of their lives to write and record their own original songs. If you'd like to find out more about the charity, you can check out our website, which is swansongproject.co.uk, or you can also look us up on our various social media channels, which will be in the description of this episode. The podcast features a range of songwriters, and I have a conversation with them about their craft. We talk about one of their songs, how they wrote it. They share us a songwriting tip, and we also talk about a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. This episode features TJ Norton, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so today I'm here with TJ Norton. Thanks for joining me, TJ.
Hi, Ben.
TJ is coming to us all the way from LA. He's an old friend of mine from around here who moved out. It is LA, isn't it? You?
Yeah. I'm in Culver City in Los Angeles.
So nice. So looking forward to catching up a bit and talking some songwriting with you. People who have seen and listened to these podcasts before, you'll know we do them in three sections. First, we're going to have one of my guest songs. We're going to talk a little bit about how they wrote that. Then section 2, TJ is going to share with us a songwriting tip. And then section 3, we're going to talk about a song that's meaningful to TJ in some way relating to bereavement. So I'll ask you to introduce your song for us, please, TJ.
My song is called Ain't Your Train. And this version is just vocal and harmonica. There's a heavier musical version, but I thought it would be nice to do the stripped down version for you. I said this train, it ain't your train. I said this train, it ain't your train. Well, I saw you staring across the station over there. You looked so drunk that you didn't even care. I saw you staring across the station over there. Well, you looked so drunk that you didn't even care. I said, this train, it ain't your train. I said, this train, it ain't your train. Well, I saw your mama in the carriage next door, getting real tight with a man who ain't your pass it. I saw your mama in the carriage next door, she was getting tight with a man who ain't your pass it. This train, it ain't your train. I said this train, it ain't your train. Let's go. said this train, it ain't your train. I said this train, it ain't your train. Well, I saw your sister in a sleeper car. She was moaning and groaning with two boys from the bar. I saw your sister in a sleeper car. She was moaning and groaning with two boys from the bar. I said, this train, it ain't your train. I said, this train, it ain't your train. Let's take it home. This train.
Okay, brilliant. So that was Ain't Your Train by TJ Norton. Are you still doing, is it still TJ in the Suitcase you do?
Yeah, I'm updating it. I'm working on a lot of other material that to kind of make it broader and more modern, but I'm still keeping that name because it's relevant. There's a reason I've got that name for the solo act.
Yeah. Is that because you still use the Suitcase for the percussion?
Well, yeah, basically, yeah. I started with that old World War II cardboard suitcase that everyone, the evacuees used to get, and I've still got that. But I just like the idea of the theory of being able to pack everything into a bag and go as a musician.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I've had to do that in my life as well. I have had to pack whatever I had left of my life into a bag and go a number of times. So it's relevant.
Yeah. It's handy, even more handy when that bag can then become part of your musical act as well.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah. So what can you tell us about writing Ain't Your Train? Did you write it just harmonica like that, just harmonica and voice, or did you write it with other things in mind?
Actually, yeah, I wrote it with harmonica and voice and the Suitcase drum and the tambourine pedal thing that I made. The wooden pedal that beats the tambourine with my left foot, and then, as you know, that I have an old suitcase that has a drum pedal on it that stands upright on the floor, and that goes on my my right foot hits that. So it was made to be pretty stripped down, and it came from an old spiritual, that idea. So there's a famous old spiritual called This Train that I'm sure you know. And there's a whole bunch of others. I listen to a lot of that stuff, and I've found some pretty obscure, like there's a couple of harmonica playing preachers from decades ago, and I was just blown away by them because they were full on Southern preachers in the US. There's a few others, but from sort of the 20s onwards, and I don't know, it was so powerful. I think stripped down music's really powerful. I really like acoustic music and real bare bones roots music. So this song, Ain't Your Train, came from the idea of a spiritual, and as you know, because I'm kind of known as a blues player, the train, the image of a train and traveling on the train has a lot of different connotations. And obviously we have black slaves in America, African slaves that escaped, and not only African slaves, but black slaves, white slaves, Chinese slaves, you name it, that escaped from the southern states and jumped the freight trains and traveled up to the cities in the north later, or just away. There's also story, people would use the train story as a way of turning things into song in kind of disguise, in code. And slaves would use code in songs, and in Christian Christian music, which turned into gospel, because that's what they were allowed to sing. And then, as you know, in blues, lyrics would get would tell you something if you knew what the code was. In lots of the famous songs, in Muddy Waters songs, Howling Wolf songs, like Bucka White, you name it, Sun House, all these old songs were communications. So I thought I'd kind of turn it around a bit, and the train to glory is a classic image of doing right and going to heaven, the passage through good to heaven. So I thought I'd turn it around a bit and make a song about a journey you don't want to go on, like a path not to take. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So and also a lot of these early blues songs, the really early blues songs, especially in the 20s and 30s, were really risque. Like now they're much tamer, which is kind of funny. Like you're very aware of blues, and you're a really good blues guitarist, and you write some really great songs. So I know you know about this stuff. Like a lot of the 20s and 30s blues was really edgy. I mean, I play stuff to people now and they're like, whoa. So, and there's a lot of fun in it, and there's a lot of joy in it as well. And it's raw, and they'll take subject matters and twist them around. And, like a lot of them things could be, a lot of them songs and lyrical content could be related closer to what would be hip hop today. And they're less mainstream now, but so I figured, I took some bits out of my life from where I used to, commute to London and back, and I used to use trains a lot, and sometimes get stuck after the last train if we'd all been out in London and we had to get back to Essex, where I'm from, and we would jump on the milk train if we like give the driver some beers or whatever. And I just like you get the last train home on a Friday night from a big city, and there's some craziness going on. There's a lot of drunk people and there's a lot of madness going on. So I mixed some of that in there and made and really the story of the song that isn't stated is this could be a journey that you don't really want to take. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I really like it. And that was your kind of starting point of I like that idea, just then flicking something in. And telling just that alternative way of looking at it. It's really good. I remember someone saying to me one time before that you can make any blues song better by adding a train to it.
Right. That's like the most popular song I've ever done. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a good one. And the train, like the harmonicas associated a lot with the train as well, isn't it? That's I always associate anyway with that. Both the image of people sat on trains playing harmonicas, but the rhythm you get with is that train style rhythm, isn't it? That's quite common with harmonica.
Oh yeah, it's huge. Like that's how I personally learned to play harmonica.
Yeah,
was by copying the super basic, 4-note, or it starts as a 2-note train rhythm, but basically a 4-beat, just a straight 4 on the floor, like. And then you learn from that, and people used to. If you go way back to people like DeFord Bailey and a whole bunch of other players, American blues players, their training impressions are mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And they could circular breathe, and they would put in like sounds of dogs chasing foxes, and they didn't, you know, they do impressions of all these sounds while doing that train with them. So if anyone's interested in that, you can throw back to all them guys. There's a guy called Joe Falisco, who's a very famous harmonica player and an authority on the history of blues and harmonica. He's also one of the world's best harmonica customizers, and he's a guy to like YouTube search.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so look at that. Yeah, it's an amazing instrument. I've always been a fan of doing a lot with a little, and the harmonica is kind of one of the best examples of that, of such a small instrument that you can do so much with.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah. What's it like writing with, you know, for such a minimalist arrangement? Is that something that you've always done when you've written, or like did you used to write, because you know you've had various bands in the past? What's it been like writing in such a minimalist way, and like does it affect your writing at all, or do you, I guess, like do you like the challenge of doing it that way?
It's a combination of things, really. I'm thinking it's a combination of things. If in some ways it's much more difficult because I don't have a writing partner, so I can't sit down with a guitarist or a keyboard player or anyone else. It's just me.
In your old bands, did you do a lot more of that, of co-writing then?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. This, in theory, is so much easier because I'm not a guitarist or a keyboard player. So there's that. So I tend to work off of rhythms, and I don't really know how common that is or not common. I really don't know, because it's kind of just what I have to do. So yeah, I'll work off of most of the time. I'll get a rhythm, like a drum track in my head, or just a beat. You know, I'll get a beat and I'll like that, and then I'll start working off of that, or I'll get an idea. As you know, writing songs is weird. Stuff comes from wherever. You'll see something, you'll hear something, or you'll wake up and so there's something in your head and you have to quickly get out of bed and get it down. Like now I run into my music room and put it down on my new setup, which is it involves a whole bunch of effect pedals and a loop pedal, and the loop pedal really helps because I can put the drum beat down, because I have a little drum unit that I do with my feet. So it's kind of moved on, but it's essentially the same thing. And I can record the drum beat and get that down, and then I can record a bass line through an octave pedal. So, and blah, blah, blah. So I can get that down, and then I work off of that, and I'll just scribble down whatever words come out, like just scribble it all down just to get it out of my head. And then I'll work the track out on the loop station and the effects, put the basic thing down, make some nice sounds that I like, and then I leave that running, and then I let it run and see what my head does, and then I'll keep reading through, and then you start the process of stripping stuff down, trying to make it better, and figuring out a chorus, or the, you know, as you know, often the first words you get end up as the chorus, or there's that repeated hook, or so. Yeah, it's in that way it's easier. So in one way it's harder because there's no one else to work off of, but in that way it's easier because I can just do it in my own space and time. I don't have to wait for anyone else.
Yeah. I'd forgotten that you were doing the loop stuff, and it just came back to me as you were talking about it. Was where before you moved away, there was one time you came and helped out with the workshop I was doing. I was doing a project working with young offenders around here.
Yeah.
And you came and did a performance for us one time when you were I think you just started doing it then, doing the loops. So I remember all the group were just hypnotized with it. I remember thinking at the time, this is going to be great. They're going to love DJ.
Oh, really? That's good.
Yeah, I remember you were demoing to them all how you do it, and they were obviously just loving they could make a sound and then repeat it and play with all that stuff. Remember that? It was in a church in Dewsbury, I think it was.
Yeah, I think I saw a picture of that actually not that long ago. Something popped up. It'll be on social media, on Facebook probably.
Memories or something, yeah. I forgot.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Yeah, that was a good day.
It's helpful for writing songs. Like the loop pedal is helpful for me because I don't have an instrumentalist with me, because I don't play an instrument that is, you know, basically a keyboard or a guitar. So
Yeah, and that's the other thing that I was going to ask you, following on from that, is how. So do you use the loop pedal when you play live now, or are you doing the stripped down? So that's what I was going to ask you is, what's it like doing the DJ and the suitcase stuff? I mean, you used to have your suitcase, your tambourine pedal and the harmonica and the voice as well. Like keeping track of everything that you're doing. Is that ever an issue of the amount of multitasking you're trying to do at the same time? Or is it something you get used to?
No. Like with the first, the original incarnation of TJ and the Suitcase, which like you've seen it, so you know what it is. But for everyone that hasn't seen it, it's just me singing, playing harmonica, acoustic, and through a small valve amplifier, and then the suitcase with the drum pedal on my right foot and the tambourine beater pedal on my left foot. So both feet are going, voice is going, harmonica's going. No, I always have a set list. I always have a set list, and I always have it on the floor. I know some people don't, but so that I have a plan. I deviate from the plan sometimes depending on how the crowd is reacting. And the songs, I can shorten the songs or stretch them out because I have a set list. I probably have a 3-hour set list for that of mostly old blues tunes, because that's what went down well. And they're not all the ones that people would know. Some of them are, there's a few in there, but a lot of them aren't. And the thing I do with the harmonica playing, because there's no like guitarist, is I play really rhythmically. I play a lot of rhythm. And then I throw in lead lines, or I'll do a solo when the needs to be. But my solos even consist mainly of rhythm. If you really listen to them, they're rhythm tracks with some standout riffs. So no, actually, I keep the drum patterns really super basic with that setup, and I just work off of what's happening in the moment. Like they're really basic, but that was kind of the idea in the first place.
Yeah, it's great. I'll have to put a link to one of your videos in the description so people watching this can go and see a full TJ and the Suitcase style.
Oh, okay, yeah, cool.
That
thanks.
thing would be cool. Yeah, really good. There was one thing I was going to mention there, but I can't remember what it was now. Oh yeah, just another benefit of when you do things by yourself, like you say, you can lengthen or shorten songs. Well, I mean, you can do it with a band as well, can't you? But there's a bit of freedom, a bit more freedom, I guess, when you're by yourself to improvise where the song's going to go.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, no, you can do it. Well, you can do it with your band because you're playing together and you work together really, really well as a unit, and you know each other so well musically. Like then it works. But if you don't have that, it's difficult. Yeah. Like I've found that, and I also think, from my point of view, like it's not fair on other musicians unless you're that tight.
Yeah.
If you've got that tight of a communication, and as musicians on stage, then it's cool, and you've done that stuff, with Crosscut Saw I used to play with in Leeds. After not very long, we had a communication that worked the same as your band, and we could so there was times where the bass amp broke, or like I vividly remember doing like a 20-minute solo, just me and the drummer, like I'd get off stage and climb on the bar and walk out the back, and like, so you can do that stuff if you've got the right people, but obviously solo, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And that depends, like, what you have to know the songs well to do that.
Yeah. I always remember hearing about John Lee Hooker would apparently wouldn't rehearse with his pickup bands. So, these musicians that he'd just pick up on, wherever he was starring, there's someone to get a band for him, and he wouldn't rehearse with them. And he said, if they're not good enough to follow me, I don't want them playing with me. So he just... And he'd just do whatever he wanted, and they just had to be completely on the ball. And I mean, that'd be an intimidating job to get picked up by John Lee Hooker. And
I've done it, not for John Lee Hooker, but I used to play for another old American blues man in England, and I've played for a few people here as well. And it's that.
It's a big part it's a big part of the blues kind of tradition, isn't it? Of people playing together in that way, and that there's so much more improvisation than there is in other genres, I guess.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, I've had that. I've definitely had that experience a number of times. Sometimes it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, it's awesome. There's awesome moments. There's sometimes it's amazing, but there's other times where I've played for one person in particular who was an incredible artist, and you know, the traditional old black African American blues artist, incredible guitarist, could play more with one hand on the neck than I know pretty much anyone can play with two hands on a guitar. Just mind blowing, but completely unpredictable. Like, he would literally, I've done gigs with him where he's constantly told the band wrong tempos, wrong keys, just deliberately to throw the band out. Or he's done it to me, like when we used to play duo gigs sometimes, and then, you know, there's no set list. He's just like, he'll just turn around and go, right, G, and it'll be A or whatever. And you're like, ah!
Oh man, good fun, eh? Good fun.
It's good to learn. It's a good way. It's a scary way of learning, but it teaches you a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can imagine. Let's move into section 2, shall we? I'm just aware of your time. So section 2 is where I ask my guests to share with a songwriting tip that might be useful for other songwriters. So what would your tip be for us, DJ?
My tip would be to keep your idea really simple. Like I explained about the train song, like it come from a really simple idea of the train being used as some kind of vision of a journey, whatever that is to you. It's just really simple, and then I just twisted it round. I kind of flipped it round, and that was it. And then work off of that, work off something really simple, because songwriting, like personally, I find songwriting really intimidating. Sometimes, you know, I mean, it's a constant learning process, and I'm around now here. I'm around some ridiculously good songwriters. You know, as a musician, as any kind of artist, you know that you do something and it's never good enough. Like, you do something and you put it out, and then you go back to it and you're like, oh, I could have done this better, and I could have done that better, and you can get so lost in that. So the songwriting thing can appear to need to be complicated or clever, and it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's really good. And what I was thinking about there with it is that I think it's a funny thing. So like you're saying, you know, keep it simple, and like using the Ain't Your Train as an example. But then when we talk about Ain't Your Train, like it's kind of, and you can put it in that simple term, but there's all that history and the different kind of things that we were talking about that kind of feeds into it. So like, even though like it's like a simple idea can have a lot more to it as well, like, you know, complicated stuff. And that's the beauty of like good art, I think, a lot of times, that it's simple on the surface, but it contains a lot more, if that makes sense. So like,
yeah, it makes total sense.
Like, you might not have been writing it with all these things, man, this is all the symbolism I'm doing here, this is what it's referencing, but it is it's just written in a simpler way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you know, that makes total sense to me. Like, in order for something to be really deep and meaningful, I think I have to go towards the simplicity first, to go to the simplest idea first, and then, you know, to use a cliche, like it's like a seed, and that grows into something much bigger and more profound than you would have thought, hopefully.
Yeah.
John Prine. I'll just have to say the words of John Prine. Or as songwriters go, I saw John Prine and Sturgill Simpson at the Grammy Museum, downtown Los Angeles, and in a really small room. It's a really small room, and they sit, this particular events, they sit with the songwriters, and there's a really good interviewer who's one of the guys that runs the Grammy Museum, super knowledgeable, and they just sit down and talk, and they were talking about songwriting, obviously, and John Prine's So I'm sure you're a John Prine fan, but
He is one that that slipped me by in a way. But he died recently, didn't he?
yes.
Yeah, and then when that happened, I was kind of like, I need to get. This sounds like someone that I've just. There's a few where that happens where someone like you might hear the name every now and then, or you might know a certain song, and it's like I'll get into them at some point, and then he's just one that I've just not got around to delving into yet. But I'm excited to do it.
It's a rabbit hole. Like, I know that you'll dive into it now, and I did as well, and I'm still. It's there's so much work there, and his songwriting skills are mind blowing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Is he kind of like Nashville country kind of stuff? Is that?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Would be classed as country. There's a huge influence on so many people, and probably one of the most well-known now would be Sturgill Simpson. And I don't know if you've dived into Sturgill Simpson, but
I've not deep dived yet. But I've listened to an album or two that I've really liked. But yeah, he's another one that keep me into listen to more of.
Yeah, go to the Late Show performance. There's a war song that they did. Was it the Late Show? I'm not getting an answer. It's all right. It was Letterman. I think it was Letterman. I don't know. It was I think it was the Late Show.
Yeah, I'll have a look.
On YouTube or something.
It's one of the great joys. I mean, it's one of the things that I love with speaking to people who are similarly deep into the music. When you share those kind of different things and introducing people to different artists, and it's one of the great pleasures of doing this podcast. Really, is like every guest. Then so many of them. The song that they've chosen for the third section, what we'll get to in a second, has been an artist I didn't know, and I'm like, this song's amazing. How does not know about this?
I know, me too, all the time. Like, it happens to me so often. Like that's why I'm in the John Prine thing right now, because I mean, his name's come up, over the years. Like you say, you see that name, and you're like, oh, and then you don't have time or whatever, and then when you do dive into these people, there's just like never-ending list of incredibly talented, amazing musicians and artists, and it's just awesome. I know for the rest of my life, people will be going, oh, this song by that person, and I'll dive in, and I'm in another rabbit hole of amazingness.
Yeah, it's like even if no more music was made, there's we'd still have enough to keep finding out about. But it's even better because new stuff keeps getting made. So it's like it's just never going to run out. It's Bonnie Prince Billy's been my big one recently. Do you know Bonnie Prince Billy?
No.
So he was one who Nick Rafferty, who was on the podcast a while ago, chose one of his songs, and it was one of them songs. But I was just like, "What? This is amazing!" And then and mainly he's got loads of stuff, but mainly the album, what that song's from, I was just listening to on repeat. I just can't get enough of it. But what happens as well a lot, I found with artists, I imagine it's what's going to happen with John Prine, is when you start listening to it, you're like, I know this song. Oh, this is a great song. Yeah, I know this song. I've heard so-and-so did a version of this song. And that seems to happen a lot with great songwriters for me. When I get into their work, there's loads of their songs. I feel there's a lot of songs that are out there that I know and love, but I don't know who they're by. I've heard them in a TV show. I've heard someone did a cover of it. And that's what I'm expecting will happen with John Prine.
Well, often their song becomes really well known, but it isn't by them.
Yeah.
Because someone else covered it.
Yeah. So Bonnie Prince Billy, who I just mentioned. Yeah. Bonnie Prince Billy, who I just mentioned, had a song called I See a Darkness, what Johnny Cash did on one of his later albums.
Oh, wow.
So obviously I knew that one because those later Johnny Cash albums I was just obsessed with. So that was one I was like, oh, you won't have to see a Darkness. That's, having Johnny Cash do one of your songs is...
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, I think you'll like him. He's got some great stuff. Cool. So let's move into section 3 now, shall we? This is where I ask my guests for a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. And what I do here is I put the link in the description. So if you're watching or listening to this podcast and you're not familiar with the song, you can go check it out on YouTube and come back and we can have a little chat about it. So what song did you choose for us, TJ?
So I chose Into the Mystic by Van Morrison.
Nice.
Yeah. What can I say about? Well, what do you want to ask first about that song, or why I chose that song? I mean,
I guess just why you chose it. What was it? Was it like, and what was a lot of people find with that question is that a lot of songs come to mind, but then there's one that kind of leads it. Is there a reason why that one stood out to you? Does it have a personal experience linked to it, or
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, that song. My godmother was living in Ireland, and she got sick. She had a brain tumor, a stage 4 tumor, and I went to Ireland to be with her. I hadn't seen her for quite a while, and she was a huge music fan, and she was also, there's a reason she's my godmother, because when I was a little kid, growing up in Essex, on Canvey Island in Essex, her house was at the end of the street. Our houses weren't that far away. We were like, I don't know, 10 houses away or something, and we were all kids running around in the street as we used to, and her daughters and sons, were our best friends. And when I'd get in trouble or whatever, like, and run from my mum, like, I'd run down to her name's Pam, and I'd run to Pam, and she would be like my protector. And so we were really close. And when I was young, and she was my mum's best friend, and my mum and dad were super close to her. And she was a really strong, she came from a very, very tough background. She was a super strong person. She was a fighter. She had a lot of rough times in her life. She started work in London at age 14, on her own. So she'd been through a lot in her life, and she was a huge music fan, and she was really positive towards other people. She did that kind of work, and she was just really a go for it person. So that was, her, so she loved that song. And on a Friday night, we were staying in the little cottage house, her and her husband and me and whoever else was there, because, as you know, Ireland's super sociable. People would just turn up with bottles of whiskey, and and then we would sit on a Friday night, and it was like song night, and just we'd take turns on who chooses the playlist, and drink wine or whatever, and just get drunk and dance and jump up and down, scream, shout, whatever happened, and she did that up until just before she passed. So I don't know. So that song just is always in my head when I think about her. So that is very relevant to this podcast, to your podcast, and the Swan Song Project.
Yeah, that's some beautiful memories. I've got connection family in Ireland, and those memories are very familiar to me as well. They're just really good times, aren't they? And people sharing music like that.
There's something there's still something about Ireland and the Irish, particularly in Ireland, that I found that was old-fashioned in a good way, like that deep connection of people. I found that when my godmother passed, and she passed at home, I was holding her hand when she passed, in bed at home in the front room, when you could see the fields outside the window, and the cows breaking through the fence, coming into the front garden. People just came. It was for me, it was a very strange experience, but a really good experience. But people just came. People just appeared, and people walked for miles, literally, and turned up and knocked on the door with arms full of food and a lot of whiskey, and a lot of Irish whiskey. But people just appeared. People didn't call up. People did call up, but didn't call up and ask her. People just appeared because they knew what grief was about and what this time was about. And then, and there's also something I wanted to say about that time of being with someone who was terminally ill and knew they were going to go, knew they were going to travel on and pass on, is people don't talk about the fun and the laughter. And I've experienced that with a number of people I've known that were, that got sick and were going to pass, is people, the press and things don't often talk about the joy that happens in that, whatever that time, that span of time is, where you're with someone who's in that situation. And there was so much laughter. There was obviously a lot of pain and a lot of, and a lot of grief, but there was so much laughter and joy, and like music was a massive part of that. Like she was always playing music, and she would like turn the music on and play some Van Morrison, play some Scott Walker, play some Johnny Cash, whatever. And that was a really beautiful thing,
Yeah, it's great, TJ. It's yeah, like you say, like people, and it's sad when people kind of fear when someone's dying and someone's got terminal illness, that a lot of people might pull away and like be worried about it because it's sad. But like you say, because people don't lose their sense of fun and the sense of humor, and yeah, you can have some really magic times with people, and there's I love that kind of the really dark humor a lot of people get when they've kind of accepted the situation, and some of the yeah, you can have some very good times, but yeah, lots of like very dark jokes about the situation. Did you see there was one? I think it was an Irish guy, in fact. It was something I saw online about this guy who, when he knew didn't have long left, and he'd recorded him like doing this thing about like that he was still alive in his casket, and he'd arranged for it to be played at his funeral. So as the casket was lowered to the ground, like you could hear his voice, "Hey, let me out, let me out."
Oh yeah, I did see that.
You see that? Oh,
wasn't that Irish?
I think it was, yeah.
I think that was Irish. That doesn't surprise me at all, coming from the Irish. They've just got the most incredible sense of humour and groundedness.
Yeah, that cracked me up to that one. But yeah, people, you know, some great times with people right to the end. And it's nice, like it's nice hearing you talk about it then, and like seeing like they're clearly memories that mean a lot to you, and yeah, it's really nice to see, and that like you had those times with those people when.
Oh, yeah, I actually feel very lucky to have had that experience.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks a lot for your time, TJ. It's really nice catching up with you.
Yeah, you're really welcome, mate. I'm really glad we got to talk. We should do this, communicate more.
Yeah, we should have a non-podcast. We'll just have a music chat sometime.
Yeah, that would be rad. Like we can swap songwriters and stuff. Like there's a bunch of people here that
it's always good to do.
Lucky enough to know now. So
yeah, I'd love to hear about some of you people you've come across out on your travels out there. Great stuff. Well, yeah, and so thanks a lot everyone for tuning in. Check out TJ's stuff. I'll put some links in the description, and I'll be back with another episode soon. Thanks a lot, TJ.
Thanks, mate. Bye.